My name is Simo Dragicevic, and I head up Playtech Protect. Playtech's safer gambling product services and research, and also BetBuddy, which is a data analytics company which was acquired by Playtech about 3 years ago. And today, in the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about navigating the shift from player safety to product safety. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a high-level overview of the regulatory landscape, and then I'm going to focus in on product safety and talk a little bit about some of the work that's happening in the UK around that, and then show you a couple of examples of what we consider in the industry as good practices that we're trying to put forward. And then after that, we'll have an opportunity to talk around a few of those things with Pierre. So without further ado, when it comes to regulation, there's a lot happening at the moment. It's a real melting pot that the industry's, I guess, struggling to deal with. And if we think about what some of those forces are, COVID-19 has had a major impact on regulation. We've seen some very strict measures implemented. For example, online gambling banned in jurisdictions like Latvia, and some mandatory deposit limits in other jurisdictions. If we think about product and marketing, we've seen, again, some very strict measures put in place in some jurisdictions. For example, we have the advertising ban in the whole of Italy, and some restrictions in the UK and other jurisdictions like Australia and Spain during COVID. On the product side, that will be the focus of the rest of the presentation. I won't talk too much about that now. And also from a policy perspective, we've seen this shift away from, if we go back 10 years, most of the focus from the policy makers and regulators was around informed player choice and making sure people could make the right choices, and that there was a support network in place for those who experienced harm and they got the appropriate care that they needed. But now there's this shift to public health, which is really treating the entire population as at risk of gambling related harms, and some specific focus on subpopulations like the youth. But if we look at all of this and try and analyze it, you have regulations that are happening sort of today and in the short term, and some that will have an impact longer term. And some of these could have a big impact on the industry from a GG-wide perspective. Some of them could have a lower impact. And I guess it's unsurprising that the industry doesn't want to be, I guess, tackling the top left of this matrix. So what I call the threats, these are the one-size-fits-all universal approaches to responsible gambling, the banning of advertising, major product restrictions, one-size-fits-all loss and deposit limits, etc. These, unfortunately for the industry, are often easy to implement. They're good at grabbing the headlines, but actually the evidence suggests that they don't always help the people they're supposed to help, who are the at-risk and problem gamblers. In parallel, there are also opportunities. So compliance and regulation could be used as an opportunity to better protect the customer. And here, this is opportunities to use data to better manage VIPs, to assess customer affordability. And Wes, just a couple of minutes ago, was talking through all of those initiatives that the BGC is doing. And these are actually hard to implement. Unfortunately for the industry, they won't make the headlines, but actually, I believe they have significant promise to help at-risk gamblers. And there are some other long-term issues that could crop up, not today or tomorrow, but maybe in 5 years, around transparency and ethics and whatnot. But let's think about product then. In the UK, for example, there's currently a consultation from the Gambling Commission around changes to game and product, which are ultimately supposed to protect the consumer. But if you look at some of the proposed changes, some of these could actually threaten the industry and the customer experience. So the proposal, for example, to remove autoplay, we believe could have a detrimental impact on the customer experience, especially as most customers are playing slots on mobile today. And also our own research suggests that the link between a feature like autoplay and problem gambling isn't as strong as maybe some think. removing what some people call losses disguised as wins or wins below the stake would have a major impact on the slots vertical. Also trying to limit concurrent slots that has some technical issues as well. So there are some potential threats there that we are trying to navigate. Also, there are probably some good things happening, you know, having a universal speed for slots, removing, for example, stop reels or slam stops. There's a lot of support for that because it takes away the illusion of control. We all know that slots are random, and trying to encourage people to stop the reels and influence the outcome can have cognitive distortions, and also things like time and money indicators. So the efforts to improve product safety have some opportunities to improve the customer experience and prevent harm, but also some issues as well that we're having to try and tackle. So if we take wins below the stake or losses disguised as wins, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that and show a couple of examples, and also talk a little bit about player education and some of the things that could be done to improve the player experience there. And what I'm going to show you a couple of videos of slots, and I just want you to look at them, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we see. With the first example, what I want to show is an example of what I consider is the old way of designing slots. And obviously there's a long tail of content in the market. There are thousands of slots out there, so there will be still versions of these games out there, but this is really an old way of designing them. And in this particular example, most of the actual returns are below the stake, but just focus on the celebratory elements of it. If you can't hear the audio, don't worry, you'll still get the picture. But let me just play the first one. So I think the first 3 or 4 are actual returns below the stake, and the stake here is £1, and at the end you'll see a stake which is above £1, a true win. Okay, I hope you heard that as well. So from our perspective, there really is insufficient differentiation between those wins below the stake and above the stake. There's definitely a theme of celebrating the win below the stake, and even though we did see a dynamic win box at the end, when you actually look at the count up, the length of the celebration, the audio, it's very similar whether the win is above or below the stake. If we look at how games are designed today, we do them very differently. So let me just show this example. And most of the examples here are wins above the stake. I think it's on the third one, you'll see one for 20p, which is a win below the stake. Just focus on how different that is to the rest of them. Again, each stake is £1. And there, I think you can see there's a very clear differentiation between a true win and a return below the stake. And the key difference between the previous example is that rather than celebrating the win below the stake, we're actually notifying the player with a brief audio sound, and also the win line or the pay lines that have actually returned the money back to the player. So very different focus on the count up, much shorter the length and the audio. In the vast majority of games today that Playtech are making, our content studios, also the other content providers, the major providers in the BGC, we're all making games like this because this is a good customer experience and this is what players want to see. Briefly on player choice, one of the opportunities we believe exists that we as an industry need to do much more of is product labeling. So it's actually educating the players about the slots that they play. And here's an example of a recent initiative, one that we trialed with William Hill in the UK, where we developed slots volatility labels for players. And most of you know that the cost of playing a slot is really a combination of the RTP and how much you stake over the long run. But actually, in the short run, the volatility can have a big difference. And what we find actually is that the more casual players who are playing slots are likely to get a better experience from lower volatility games that can extend their costs of play in the short run than, say, higher volatility games, which are more suited to more focused and regular slots players who are after a different experience. And there's also an opportunity to reinforce responsible gambling messaging, especially around using limits, for example, whether they're time limits for low volatility slots or loss limits for higher volatility slots. So we think there's a lot of potential here. We actually interviewed the players who were the William Hill players who were subject to the slots trial, and we found they liked it. 79% found the labels useful or very useful. So this is a really big focus for us as Playtech. Ensuring that people can pick the content they want and they play the games they want, they get the enjoyment out of it is really important. Okay, just to summarize then, there's very little scientific evidence linking game features to harms. Our own research is suggesting that this relationship is very complex and very nuanced. You can't look at any one thing, whether it's max stake or autoplay or volatility or hit rate or jackpots in isolation. It's this complex interplay of the player, the product, and the place or the environment. We in industry understand the products and have the data, and we have an opportunity here to shape the debate. But unfortunately, if we don't do it, and we're not doing enough of it, others will make decisions for us which are likely to be suboptimal. And even though this is very difficult, it's important work, and we have to do it now and do more of it. So that summarizes my talk. If you want more information about the work we're doing at Playtech, go on to playtech.com, Playtech Protect and Research, or also follow us on our LinkedIn page as well. So that summarizes the presentation, and thanks for listening, and I'll wait for Pierre to join.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Sorry for the little snooze I had there for a second. How are you doing, Simo?
I'm good. Pierre, how are you doing?
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for the interesting presentation on this subject. Really, really good to see that the kind of Playtech is the strategy seems to be to stay ahead of the curve of the regulators, so to say, and push the industry forward in a positive light. But I wanted to start a little bit asking you something you mentioned now during your presentation, which was the fact that you had spoken with the players of William Hill. You mentioned that you had conducted interviews. I found that a bit interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about how you communicate directly with the players? Because in the end of the day, those are the ones that run the show, so to say.
Yeah, sure. So in this particular example, we ran an A/B test. So for the UK player base, we split the player base into half. And for 2 months, half of them on the Playtech Casino tab, where we had exclusive Playtech content, half of them were exposed to Chile ratings and labels, and the other half weren't. and we interviewed them, via a questionnaire, so via a real-time pop-up. Players were asked before the survey what their thoughts, before they were exposed to the chilies, what their thoughts were on volatility. The trial ran, and then afterwards they were asked again what their thoughts were, and we had a nice data set of people's beliefs and thoughts, and also what the effect was on the ratings. And also we could have looked at the underlying data as well and assessed, what happened in terms of the actual play when the cohort that were exposed to chili ratings, did they play differently to the control group?
Okay, interesting. Do you feel that the industry is finally kind of at a point now where we are starting to understand player safety, partly through your own product safety measures and also in general what the operators are doing in the end of the day? Do you feel like we are getting close to solving player protection?
Are we solving it? Good question. There's definitely a step change in focus. Like for sure, when I started 10 years ago, I was a nuisance, and here I am today. Employed by one of the largest online supplier in the world, and I have a lot of remit and space to do my work, and I'm encouraged, whether it's the senior management of Playtech and also the Betting and Gaming Council as well. I work closely with Wes on some of those initiatives. So there's definitely a very serious approach to responsible gambling. I believe the industry is more serious. Obviously, there's more we can do. This is the challenge: is moving at a fast enough pace to convince others that we're doing enough. But yeah, for sure, it was really interesting. I think I watched one of your shows a few weeks ago. I think Jesper Scharbrink was on. He was on a panel, and there was this debate around, I think it was around affordability and product restrictions, and the discussion was, well, actually, the problem gambling rates have stayed level over the last 10 years. So, the increase of gambling, mobile gambling, more verticals is an increase in problem gambling. But what I think you're really seeing is this balance. So there has been a big increase in online new products, but also there's been a big increase in trying to stop problem gambling. So what you're seeing actually is, there's more gambling and there's more opportunity. The industry's upped its game, and it's trying to prevent problem gambling, but it's kept it constant. So we probably need to just do a little bit more just to sort of tip the balance in our favor. Yeah,
that is the $1 million question, right? Because you have, on the one hand, you have the regulators who want to impose these restrictions and kind of in many ways want to take away if you want to be really harsh, like take away a lot of what makes the games fun in the end of the day and what makes them entertaining. And on the other hand, you have the industry then who obviously needs to listen to the regulator, but kind of trying to find this middle ground somewhere. Well, like, how do you work with the regulator to try to find that middle ground? Just like what your presentation is about now, from our perspective, from an industry perspective, and from a factual perspective, it might make sense. But then you have the regulator who are answering to the politicians who might have another agenda. Like, how do you try to find that balance?
Yeah, again, it's really hard. I think we have to just keep the dialogue open, and we try to talk a lot. And part of my job is to meet with regulators and talk to them about the work we're doing and show them the data. A really good example around slots in the UK. It's very hard for a regulator to really understand the math and how these products are designed and how they work and why they're designed in the way they are. So volatility is a really good example, and the reason we have games that are low volatility and we have a lot of wins below the stake is because it's an experience people like. It kind of makes your entertainment budget last longer. There are lots of casual players who don't want to chase really big wins and they don't have deep pockets. So having lots of small returns below the stake gives them an entertainment experience that they like. And so trying to over-regulate the industry and remove some of these products and features can have unintended consequences. A little bit like autoplay, we're trying to say, look, we believe the relationship is complex. It's like an inverted U. Yes, there are some players who use autoplay whose risk increases, but there are many who don't, and they use it as a way to control their gambling and pre-commit to a certain number of spins or amount. So you have to have an open dialogue. You have to be prepared to do the work as an industry and share that, and you have to do that regularly. But as you said, it's hard because they have the pressure from the politicians and the public, and the simple measures are the ones that sometimes make them look stronger.
Yeah, and I know that you have been involved with the UKGC to give an industry perspective to the regulator. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and how did you approach the report that you're working on to the regulator?
Sure. So for those not aware, in the UK back in November, the Gambling Commission set out 3 challenges for the industry. One was on high-value customers or VIPs. One was on advertising technology. The third one was on game design. And Playtech and Scientific Games were asked to head up the game design challenge. It was myself and Phil Horn, who used to head up SG in the UK. He's since left. But we worked to try to pull together, I think with 20 other suppliers and B2Cs in the industry, a code of conduct. And that was a very collaborative process. We worked very closely with the Gambling Commission, with the industry. When it came to publish it at the end of March, early April, I think it's fair to say we didn't quite get to where we wanted to. And that's partly a result of trying to get everyone within the industry to agree on a code of conduct. And this is a real challenge because operators are different. You can have, an operator that has a big market in slots and VIPs who's going to be resistant to change versus an operator that has a big market in poker or sports, and their cross-sell to casinos quite small and is for more casual players. So trying to get everyone together on the same page has been actually quite challenging, and we're still in that process. And the Betting and Gaming Council, who have taken on board this challenge, we are publishing our code of conduct at the end of September. And again, I think people need to look at it as an incremental. There are some really good things that will be in it, but it won't be the end product. This is an iterative process, and this process of getting everyone on board takes time. There are some cultural challenges. I think Wes talked about those. And I think it's unrealistic to think that we as a big industry can agree on everything in 6 months. So the fact that I spend, every week or two, I'm calls with NetEnt, with Microgaming, with Bet365, with the BGC, and we're investing a lot of time and effort to try and do the right thing. So it's really hard, but I think we're in the right direction. I think we need to just put our foot on the gas a little bit and try and do it a little bit quicker.
But like you were saying, this is a first step where the industry is trying to come together to write this code of conduct and come together. And yes, of course, it's not going to be perfect in the first draft of this. But I think that as an industry, I think that iGaming in general is an incredible industry from that perspective, that we are so good at coming together as an industry and work towards common goal. So although, like you were saying, this at the start it's a rocky start, but once we go forward, once we move forward, if we can promote this type of collaborations between the competitors and within the industry, this is what's obviously going to lead to a brighter future. So can I ask a last question on that note? Then looking into the crystal ball now, Simo, where do you see this heading? Like, where is the industry when it comes to product safety and player protection and regulation in, let's say, 5 years' time? Where do you see this going? I know also that Jesper Kärrbrink used to say, he said that only stock market analysts can predict the future, but we'll give it a go.
Definitely more collaboration. So what we're seeing today, there will be more of it. 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, operators would compete on responsible gambling. I guess they still do. They still want to get the credits, but now we're much more open, and we have shared challenges because we're trying to protect the industry. So I definitely see that happening, collaboration. I see focus on the customer. I think some of the old practices of the let's get customers on board, let's rinse their wallets, let's squeeze them as much as we can, let's get on to the next customer. I think those practices will die out. And, iGaming, as you say, is a great industry, some great people. It will become more like an Amazon type focus on customer success and obsess around the customer and what products they really want and what makes them happy. And if they just want to spend £5 a day, that's great, because we want them to spend £5 tomorrow or £5 next week. So I think we're seeing a change in how we view the customer. And also I think there'll be more of a focus. The industry needs to be prepared to be more transparent. So, we're doing a lot of good work, but the use of data, the use of artificial intelligence, how we use it, how we use customer data, how we protect them, how good our systems are, there'll be much more of a focus on ethics and transparency, and we're going to need to be more open. So opening up what we're doing to the world, even more than we're doing today, will become a trend as well. But we'll see. Maybe we meet again in 5 years.
Yes. Let's decide that here and now, Simon. In 5 years' time, we'll do a follow-up and we'll play this back and we'll see how things have gone. But I think it's a great assessment in general. The future is bright for the gaming industry, I think, and it seems that this shift towards a focus on player safety is what's going to lead the gaming industry into a brighter future. So, thank you so much for the presentation, Simon. I really appreciate that, and thank you so much for coming on board today.
Thank you, Pierre. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.